Allan Crockett. Allan Crockett, I got to know him years ago at a school that I attended. He is a wonderful teacher. He's a good friend. He's been a coach and a mentor to me and to our family. He's blessed our lives, and he was a speaker last year. And he's the caliber speaker that everybody said, I would love to listen to Allan more. And so because of that, his message fits exactly right in with what we're doing right here. Like when we're talking about building a legacy business, he has seen businesses across the nation that have succeeded and failed because of those very reasons that we just talked about, those 4 reasons. But he also knows the solution on the backside of that. So Allan, we're grateful to have you here. You reside in Arizona. I think it's probably a little warmer in Arizona than it is right here, but you guys do get snow, right?
Had a couple inches of snow a couple of weeks ago. It was about 23, I think, this morning, but it'll probably be 60 this afternoon. So the sun's shining and the wind's not blowing, so that's a good day.
Hey, don't say that W word. We got it going on right now. It's a little howling out there, but so Allan, welcome to the Regenerative Legacy Summit. We're honored to have you as our first official speaker here today on day 2. Again, part of participating is put your insights in the chat. As you learn that key thing, like, holy cow, I didn't know that. Write that in the chat, type it in the chat, help to teach our fellow students here. But Allan, let's jump right in. Let's jump right into your presentation here. And for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to know Allan personally, I encourage you to do that. And we'll talk about one of the ways that you can do that for specific people. One of the giveaways is going to be a consultation with you, and super valuable. So stay to the end, and we'll get you hooked up with that. You able to share screen and everything?
Well, I just clicked on it. Let's see if it'll.
Yeah, we'll get you queued up here. And again, those that have just signed in after, we want to hear where you're from. And there was the questions: are you a rancher, farmer, regen ag enthusiast, or all 3? 1 for rancher, 2 for farmer, 3 for regen ag enthusiast, and 4 for all 3. So if you missed the opening slide, that's the spiel.
Are you seeing my screen yet, Jared?
I'm not. Did you accept the co-host? Looks like you are co-host, so you should have the capability to share screen. There we are. Yep, we got it there now. So pay attention, take notes, you guys. This is Allan Crockett.
All right. Well, thank you for having me today, Jared. I appreciate it. It's always good to be part of this and what you're doing and the work that we're involved with together and that kind of thing. So I appreciate being here. Creating a business that thrives without you, and that's kind of what I'm going to talk about today. And if we're going to create a legacy business, that business has to be able to thrive without us being here. And whether, like you mentioned, Jared, yesterday, when you took over the ranch, your parents went to Mexico on a mission. Whether we choose to leave and go on a mission, whether something happens to us, we become incapacitated, whether we die or whatever. If it's going to be a legacy business, it has to be able to thrive without us being here and being part of the business. With that in mind, I've been quoted as saying, I've said for years, that every problem is a people problem. And so sometimes when we talk about regenerative businesses, regenerative agriculture, I think sometimes we need to look at regenerative relationships and what we need to do there to improve relationships. And even if you think about soil and maybe how we've degraded our soil over years and the nutrients are gone, and we go back into this regenerative ag mindset, and we try to improve soil health and grow more grass or have better crops or whatever it is. sometimes we need to look at our relationships and say, hey, we need to regenerate some relationships and what's going on there. So we're going to dive into that. Peter Drucker was born in Vienna, Austria in 1909, and he was kind of considered the father of modern business management. He was a real business guru and business consultant. And the last century, died in 2005. Whoops, what did I do? Am I still there, Jared?
Yes, Alan, you're still there. Just go ahead and reshare screen, and I appreciate everyone's patience with technology. We'll edit this out when we do the recording, but
Thank you. I appreciate that. Are we back on now?
those that are on that are presenting maybe as a backup, just go ahead and email Justine your slides. And then that way we can load them from the cloud.
Well, good. My computer has seemed to froze up or something here. Can you hear me, Jared?
Yeah, we can hear you. It
But you don't
seems
see my screen.
I don't see your screen, but we see your beautiful smiling face, Alan. It's obviously pretty cold there in Arizona if you froze up just like it did on me the other day. So
Yeah.
uh,
So let's just continue and let me try something here.
okay. Hey, what we're gonna while you're getting that booted up, William, I want to give William DeMille an introduction here. The other thing you can do if you have the ability, Alan, you can email me your slides. So William DeMille is on here with us. William, do you want to go ahead and unmute here real quick? He is
Hello, here I am.
part of our ranch. He's also helps with Ag Steward. He's kind of one of the background helpers, but I just wanted to introduce you to William. He grows a year-round garden and greenhouse on the ranch. He understands life or soil health better than anybody on a practical basis that I know, and so we just wanted to give you a quick introduction. William, what do you specialize in here in 3 bullet points, just like you encouraged me to do?
Okay, so I specialize in soil health, helping people to have the best soil so that they can produce the best food. And I do that through education. So I have a summer class for college-age students, but anybody can come as long as you're an adult. And then the third bullet point would be I have a lot of online education that I do. So people can find me on YouTube and all the other places online just to help teach healthy lifestyles, healthy food. I think it all starts with the soil and the food. So that's my spiel.
Yeah, very good. How do they get a hold of you, William? Because I know there's for some of these people, if your goal is to grow a garden, William is your man. If your goal is to build a farm or a ranch, let's work with Ag Steward. How do they get a hold of you?
Just through my website, all my contact is there. It's Georgic Revolution. So we'll type that in the chat right now.
Yep, that's awesome. How we doing, Alan?
We are trying.
Yeah, okay. So as Alan's getting queued up, yesterday we put in there, and some of you have been doing it. What are your intentions for this meeting here today? Specifically,
All right. Well, can you see me and hear me okay, Jared?
yeah, yep,
All
let's
right.
roll. So
I'm going to go off and just keep going. And if this thing comes out, like I say, I'll email Justine the slides and she can share them with you or
yeah,
something there. But
Okay,
Anyway, let's go ahead and
that's
continue.
that's
So
perfect. The
Peter
other thing you
Drucker,
can do is you can share your slides after, and we can make them available so that people can view that. So that'll
same,
be
acts
on
like it
that.
won't work now. So
And then just Dean, maybe you can put in the chat that page where they can access the bonuses.
that open up now, Jared?
Yep, we're back on. We're back on.
All right. So I apologize. I don't know what happened, but it happened. So Peter Drucker said a couple of things, and I'm going to start with three quotes from Peter, and I think they're applicable to what we're doing today. Only three things occur naturally in organizations: friction, confusion, and underperformance. Everything else requires leadership. And I think we can take that to the family level. We can certainly take it to the family business level. We can take it to corporations, nations, politics, any organization you want to look at. Naturally, we'll get friction, confusion, and underperformance. And if we want more than that, then we have to have leadership. The second quote I want to share with you: there's nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency something that should not be done at all. And I think that's important as we strive to do the right things in our business and really focus on what those right things are and forget about efficiency and really change to leadership and what leadership can and should do for us. And then this one: the three most charismatic leaders in this, he said this last century, the 20th century, inflicted more suffering on the human race than almost any other trio in history: Hitler, Stalin, and Mao. What matters is not the leader's charisma. What matters is the leader's mission. And if we think about that and look at that, Hitler non-combative death is estimated that he's responsible for somewhere around 11 or 12 million people dying. If you've ever been at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., it's a very sobering experience. But then you go to Stalin, and Stalin was somewhere around 20 to 30 billion estimated, and Mao was upwards of 45 million. All three of those leaders very charismatic, but their mission was not what we would consider noble or honorable or anything like that. So what I would like for you to do is I would like for you to identify a leader. And if you have a paper in front of you, write down his or her name, but a leader that you really respect and admire. And this could be a historical leader. One that I thought about was Moses and how he led the children of Israel out of Egypt. But it could be any leader that you've either studied or you've known personally or you've watched, but a leader that you can identify with. And once you kind of have that figured out, I want to ask you this question: what are the qualities that you admire about that leader? Because to me, if there's qualities in a leader that we can take and apply in our own lives and our quest for leadership, that changes a whole lot of who we are and what we're trying to accomplish. So just, I don't know, 3 or 4 days ago, I read some comments that some people have made about a leader, and I want to share those with you. Maybe it'll jar your memory or help you come up with some. Here's one: a fearless leader. I'll just go through these. Leads by invitation instead of by demand or dictatorship or those kinds of things. Very willing, loving, focuses on and sees the best in people. And again, we're trying to apply this to a legacy business. And if we're going to have a legacy business, we have to be able to be the leader that will create that and allow that to happen. So focusing on and seeing the best in people is certainly a good quality. Appreciative. There's nothing like really being appreciated for something that you do and having somebody thank you and that kind of thing. So appreciation. A keen mind. Kind heart. A real gentleman. In this case, it happens to be a man. Prepared. Proceeds with purpose. And obviously that purpose has to be, part of the mission. And as Peter Drucker says, that's what's important is the purpose or the mission behind the charisma. Attentive listener, body language, eye contact, clarifying questions and comments. One person even said that this guy sometimes will sit on the edge of his chair as he tries to understand what you're trying to say. Master delegator, never takes responsibility back once it's delegated. And again, in our leadership in our businesses, if we're going to have a legacy business, we are going to have to learn to delegate and become masters at that art. Very humble. And you would think, well, somebody that's humble, how could they be a good leader? And I think somebody that's humble is very teachable and willing to ask for help when they need it and get input from others on the team. So that shows humility. Confident decisiveness. I found that really interesting, that when we make a decision, we make it with confidence and we move forward with confidence. Kind, gentle, bold. And again, that might sound as the opposite of humble, but I don't think it is. I think it fits hand in glove with humility. Exemplary guide. He leads by example. Fully present in the moment. And Jared, you talked about that yesterday morning and again this morning, to be 100% here. And I think a leader is, if we're having a conversation, that leader is not checking text messages or emails. His mind or her mind is not off some other place. He's fully present in what we're talking about. So with that, then here's the question: which of those qualities need improvement in your life if you're going to create a legacy business, and what does that look like? I had an interesting phone call on Monday. A guy that will probably become a client of mine, but we had a lengthy conversation. But in part of the conversation, he said this. He says, "We have the management down on our ranch. We're improving soil. We're growing more grass. Our cattle are functioning like they should. We're low input. We're making money. We're profitable." He says, "The management is there," but he says, "I need help with leadership." And I think that's something we need to recognize, is there is a difference between leadership and management. You can be a good manager and not be a good leader. You could be a good leader and not a good manager. You could be both. But there is a difference there. And we need to understand that in order to have a legacy business, that is going to require leadership. I had an interesting thing happen this morning, and I want to throw out a question to you. And obviously, we're not in a room where we're answering out loud, but I want to pose this question. Your spouse is an hour late getting home from wherever he or she is, or your teenage son or daughter is an hour late, and you call them on their cell phone, they don't answer. You send them a text message, there's no response. You wait 10, 15, 20 minutes and you repeat that. You call again and no answer. You send them another text message, "I'm concerned, what's going on? Where are you at?" No response. What are the thoughts that are going through your mind when something like that happens? Give just a second to think about that, because what ends up happening there is we end up telling ourselves a story. And whether that story is a positive story or a negative story doesn't matter. So, for example, this morning, two guys were supposed to be at my place at 8 o'clock this morning. One of them's a longtime friend of mine. We had dinner last night in town, and he brought a buddy with him. They're out here hunting, and they're going to be at my house at 8 o'clock. I have a daughter, and her two boys are here visiting, and I've been out in my office. I'd walk back to the house, and it's 8 o'clock, and about 8:15, my daughter says, "Weren't they supposed to be here at 8?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Not very punctual." And my comment was, they probably got hung up at breakfast, because they said they were going to have breakfast before they came out. Well, right there, I told myself a story, and I told it to my daughter, because I don't know the answer. I don't know why they're not here, but I told myself a story. They probably got hung up at breakfast. I had a lady, when I asked this question one time, she said her husband said, "Oh, he's probably at the bar." or he's in the bar ditch, one of the two, and so things happen and we tell ourselves stories. And I think it's important to understand that we do that. Okay. Um, my wife was over an hour late coming home from work one day, and she's a high school teacher. And I looked at the calendar, and there was nothing on the calendar, and I thought, man, I hope she didn't get in a car accident. I started to tell myself a story, and then the next thing was, oh, she probably had a meeting and forgot to tell me, or she told me and I forgot. Again, that's a story. And we tell ourselves stories, and we've been telling ourselves stories for lots and lots of years. And sometimes, especially when it comes to things like money, uh, those stories are anchored in something that happened to us in the first 6 or 8 or 10 years of our lives, and maybe even before that. And I'll share with you a story that I was in a meeting doing some work on the East Coast last September, and we started talking about money stories. And there was a guy there, and his story was that there's a scarcity of money, and we're going to run out of money. Not we, he. He was going to run out of money. He had a good paying job, and he was uh, also had a side business, and he was just for sure he was going to run out of money. Well, when it came down to really understanding where that feeling and that thought came from, it went clear back to him being in his mother's womb, is where he identified that as where it started. And I was intrigued by that because I'd never heard anything like that before. Well, we finished up the day, and the next morning before we started, he says, I called my mom last night. And I said, well, yeah, how's your mom? And I've never met her. I don't know her. And it was just kind of like, how's your mother doing? And he said, well, I called to ask her what was going on in her life when she was pregnant with me. And all of a sudden my ears perked up, and I wanted to know what happened. And he says, my mom told me when she was about 6 or 7 months pregnant with me that she and my dad moved from one state to another. He hurt his back and couldn't work. And she was really worried that we were going to run out of money. And she said, even so much that your dad ended up having to have back surgery, and he was in recovery in the hospital when I went to the hospital to have you. He was in a different room when you were being delivered, but in the same hospital. And she says, I was worried sick that you were our firstborn, and I was worried sick that we would not be able to feed you, to clothe you, to take care of you. And it's interesting that epigenetics happened in the womb. And Steve Campbell may talk about that tomorrow and what he does. But even in human beings, we see that. And so the stories we tell ourselves, we have to be really, really careful about that. And what happens is those stories get ingrained in our subconscious mind, and our subconscious mind works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, year after year after year. It never shuts off. And our subconscious mind is there to protect us from physical damage, from emotionally getting hurt, from financial damage. And so it reminds us, and it keeps those stories there, and it does a really good job of protecting us until it doesn't. And when it doesn't is when these old stories that we've told ourselves, or a subconscious reminds us of them, keep us from progressing and making the changes in our lives and our businesses that we need to make. And so I think it's really important that we recognize when we tell ourselves stories, and that we stop that, or we recognize the source of where they're coming from, and we go back and we make peace with that so that we can complete that and move on and create the kind of life that we want to have and the business that we want to have. Back in the late 80s, I was in a meeting with a bunch of ranchers, and it was a group thing. And there was a guy there, a martial artist by the name of Tom Crum. And he was into Aikido, I think is the way you pronounce the martial art that he was into. And he was dressed in his gi, his martial art uniform, if you will. and he did a whole bunch of acrobatic things and whatnot. And then he got a sword, and he started with that sword, and he started pretending like he was cutting through a jungle, trying to cut a path through the jungle so he could go someplace. And he said this, he says, we have to cut through our stories so that we can create the life that we want to have. And I think that's really interesting that we, good leaders, don't tell stories. If there's an issue with somebody in the family business or in the business or employee or an employer, we don't tell stories. We just go and talk to that person. And if we have to regenerate that relationship, we do that. Anyway, I think that's just something to understand. Here's a picture of a guy that was born in 1848. He's Italian descent. His parents had actually been exiled from Italy. He was born in Paris, France, as I said, in 1848. Went back to Italy, studied in Switzerland, became a mathematician. I think he even got some advanced degrees, did some research. His name's Vilfredo Federico Amaso Pareto. And in his studies and in his math work and in his research, he discovered that in his home country of Italy, this is while he was in Switzerland, but in his home country of Italy, 80% of the wealth and 80% of the property in Italy was controlled by 20% of the population. And thus was born the Pareto principle or the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule. And so with that 80-20 rule, I want to talk about that a little bit, because when we look at that, we all kind of get that 80% of our efforts gives us 20% of our return. 20% of our effort gives us 80% of our return. And in our businesses, we look at business and that Pareto principle and what we're trying to accomplish and that kind of thing. If we're going to grow a business that is going to be a regenerative business, that is a legacy business, we're going to have to learn to live by this rule. And we're even going to have to take this a step further. And what I'm going to suggest to you this morning is that there's an 80% of what you do in your business that you need to eliminate from the things that you do. You either need to completely get it out of your business, you need to delegate it, you need to outsource it, but it needs to go someplace else and off your plate. And so I'm going to ask you that question. What's the 80% that you need to delegate and you need to get rid of? I'll give you a second to think about that. Because if you're going to be the leader that takes your business and creates this legacy business and takes it to the next generation and the next generation beyond that, Jared, I think you've mentioned, we're looking 5 generations down the road. You're going to have to learn to delegate, and you're going to have to stop trying to do everything yourself. And so if there's that 80% that you're going to delegate and get rid of, then that leaves the 20% that you need to keep, and that your energy and your focus needs to be on that 20%. Well, when you get that done, what happens then is that 20% now becomes your 100%. And if you go back to one of those things that we read earlier, one of the qualities of that these people were talking about their leader, one of the qualities is he delegates, and once he delegates, he never takes it back. And so when I think about that and we talk about that, well, what is 80% that needs to disappear off your plate and that 20% that you need to keep? Now, in the case of ranching, that does not mean that you don't get to go check cows anymore. It does not mean that you don't get to go move cows or you don't get to participate in branding. But a lot of those kinds of things need to be delegated to somebody else. It doesn't mean you can't participate. It just means it's not your focus and your priority any longer. It has to be somebody else's. And so what is the 20% that you need to keep? Well, I'm going to tell you that part of that needs to focus on leadership. Okay. And that leadership, when we look at leadership and things that you can control. So Stephen Covey talked about a circle of concern, and we can look at politics in North America. We can look at politics throughout the world and the wars and the things that are going on, the weather phenomena that we talked a little bit about yesterday. Uh, there's things that we're concerned about, but we don't have any influence or any control on those things. There are other things that if you take that circle of concern, a smaller circle within that circle is a circle of influence. And we have influence in our families. We have influence certainly in our businesses. But even within that circle of influence, there's a smaller circle, and that's a circle of control. And there are things that we have 100% absolute control over. We need to take that 20% that we're going to keep, and we need to focus on the things that we can control and the things that we can influence. Now, in order for this business to grow and be the business, this legacy business, it cannot depend on us. We have to start the ball rolling that direction. We have to be the leader that creates that, but we also have to train the next leader coming down the pike. Several years ago, there was a business owner here in town that I did some business with, and his son worked in the business, and then this man ended up selling his business to a third party. And I happened to be in the store 2 or 3 weeks after it had sold, and his son waited on me, and I just, kind of out of curiosity, why didn't you buy this business? And man, was that the wrong question to ask. He says, that's what I came back here for and went to work for my dad for, because I was going to buy the business and he sold it to somebody else. And I was like, whoops, sorry, I shouldn't ask that question. And finished my business and left. And it was probably a month or two later, I just happened to run into his dad. And I did not ask his dad the question. I was not going to open that can of worms again. I learned my lesson. But he brought it up and he said, I brought my son back and tried to get him into the business, but he just didn't have the initiative to take over the business. And so I sold it to somebody else. And I think that's sad when we have a family business and we end up selling it to somebody else when we have a family member that wants it. So then the question comes back as we look at that 20% that we're going to keep, is part of being a leader is being able to train and help the next generation become the leader that can take over the business and run with it long after we're gone. So again, creating a business that will thrive without us. Several years ago, I was doing a workshop and a couple came in, they were in their 60s, and they came in and visited with me, and their son was in the workshop also. And they said, we keep waiting for our son to step up and show some initiative. Same type of thing, except this was not a store, this was a ranch. And we talked a little bit about it, and the next evening their son came in, and without me asking any questions, he said, I keep waiting for mom and dad to turn over the reins, at least part of it, so I can start running this business. He thought he was capable. They didn't think he was, but nobody was having the conversation. Nobody was teaching the next generation how to be that leader and how to be the leader that could take that business and run with it. And so I see that in and out of agriculture where family businesses are lost because we're not training the leader, the next leader. And sometimes that's because we're not even the leader that we need to be. So part of being a leader is being able to delegate. Part of it's being able to listen. Part of it's being able to help people grow into the next position in the business. and providing the training, whether you personally provide it or you send them someplace else to get that training. So I would encourage you, as you look at this Pareto principle, to really look at that. If you want to grow a legacy business, and if your business today depends on you, you're going to have to give up some of this stuff. And I would suggest you give up 80% of it, and you keep that 20% that now becomes your 100%. Depending on your age and the age of your business, you're going to repeat this cycle more than once, 2 times, 3 times, maybe even 4 or 5 times, because each time you get 100%, there will come a time in the future, and it might be a year out, it might be 4 or 5 years out, that 100% that you now have, you need to get rid of 80% of it so that you can focus on the 20% that's needed to be focused on so that you can grow the business the way you want to grow it. You might be sitting here thinking, well, I don't really want to grow my business. I'm ready to retire. I'm talking about succession. Well, it's the same kind of thing there. We need to be able to say, okay, let's get that 80% off our plate and delegate it to the next generation. And if there's not a next generation, then to a professional manager or something along those lines. And then let's take that 20% and let's focus on that until we can also give it up. Okay. So it doesn't matter if you're new in business, if you've been in business a lot of years and looking at retirement or succession, we still need to take this principle and apply it. Okay. So let me give you another idea on what to do to help you with that. Well, first, the Stephen Covey quote: you have to decide what your highest priorities are and have the courage, pleasantly, smilingly, non-apologetically, to say no to other things. And the way to do that is having a bigger yes burning inside. I read one time a different take on this same kind of a thing, is decide what you want your life and your business to look like, and then say no to everything else. And if we understand that and are willing and able to say no and not apologize and move beyond the things, the people pleasing things of, yes, I'll help you with that. Yes, I can do that. But no, I can't do that. No, that doesn't work for me. The timing's not right. And that's okay, because you have a bigger yes burning inside, or it's not in alignment with the things that you want your life to be or your business to be. And when we get to the point that we can say no to those other things, we will be a step closer to becoming the leader that our business needs us to be. So I'd like for you to take out a clean sheet of paper, and I'm teaching this as if I was in a room with you, but I'd like for you to take out a clean sheet of paper, and I'd like for you to write down a goal, whether it's a personal goal or a business goal. And I don't want this to be a 5 or 10-year goal. At the very longest, something that needs to be accomplished this year. But it could also be something that you want, to accomplish, a goal that you want to accomplish personally or in your business in the next quarter, the first quarter of 2024, which we're a little more than halfway through the first month of that. So, you've got 10 weeks, 9 weeks, 9.5 weeks left, if that's what it is. If you're looking at an annual goal, you've got another, 49.5 weeks or something, 50 weeks to accomplish this goal. So I want you to write down a goal, and you probably have something in mind, and maybe you even set a New Year's resolution, and maybe you've already broke it, but I want to show you a way around that. And so write down a goal. And then I want you to write down on that same paper the result that goal, if you accomplish that goal, what will the result be for your business or for you personally? So if you're looking at, you want to become a better leader and there's something specific you want to work on to accomplish that, and you get that done, what will the result be to your business? Then this next part I want to share with you is something I think gets glossed over a lot, that we really don't, maybe we don't focus on this the way that we should. And consequently, we end up when we hit a roadblock or something, we can't find our way around it. So on the left-hand side of the page, I want you to list any obstacles that would keep you from accomplishing your goal. And I want these to be very specific, and I want them to be real. So you could say something that's not real or very, very, very unlikely is, well, we could have an earthquake and all of us get swallowed up in the earthquake and buried in the earth. Well, all right, if that happens, your legacy business is gone and so is your legacy life. All right, so that's probably not going to happen, so I wouldn't worry about that. But the obstacles that you really feel could potentially keep you from accomplishing that goal. And whatever those are, just write them down and we'll take a look at them.
About 15 minutes, Alan, and then we'll take a couple of questions.
Okay, perfect. And then on the right-hand side of that page, if you kind of draw a line down the middle or fold it in half or whatever, I want you to take each one of those obstacles and I want you to write a solution to that. And I'm going to suggest to you that there is a good possibility that for some of us, if not all of us, that we ourselves are the biggest obstacle we're going to have to overcome. You know, you are the obstacle. And when I say that, it goes back to our mindset. And again, especially the subconscious mind that keeps bringing these stories up from our past. Maybe even past behaviors that have kept us from progressing the way we want to progress. Maybe there's old habits, old feelings and beliefs, excuses that we've used in the past. So I'm going to suggest that maybe we ourselves ought to be listed there. You know, put your name in there. And if there's something specific that you know you need to work on, that you've created that obstacle in the past, then write the solution down to that. And if you don't get this done right now, that's okay. I use this format a lot. And if I set a quarterly goal and the result that that's going to give me or my business, and then I look at any obstacles, and sometimes there might be a limiting belief on my end that I need to find a solution to. And sometimes it's even completing something that was in my past so that I can create something in the future. That was the old Allan, and the old Allan doesn't do that anymore, and the new Allan acts this way. And if I needed to write that down, I write it down. And then from there at the bottom of that page, and I didn't have room on the slide, so I'll put another slide up there, but the actions, the steps that you need to take to accomplish that. So lots of times we set a goal and then we come back and we make an action plan or we come up with some next steps that we need to do, and we gloss over the obstacle side of it. The roadblocks, the stumbling blocks, the things that could happen. And if we do talk about them, it's just superficially, and I want us to go deeper than that. I want us to really look at that and say, okay, if there really is a problem there, a real obstacle, what's the solution? What's the way around it, over it, through it? So that if we actually hit that potential obstacle, we've already figured out a way around it. Now, it may not happen. The way we figured out may not be the solution when the time comes, but the fact that we went through the mental process of coming up with a plan to overcome it will serve us tremendously. So again, if we're going to create this legacy business, we're going to have to be legacy leaders. And we may have to regenerate or have some regenerative relationships, those relationships that have been depleted over time, like our soils have. We may have to go back and fix those. And that starts, and that could be something, on one of your obstacles, hey, I don't have a relationship good enough with my son to be able to bring him into the business, and that's my goal. Or my spouse and I are not seeing on the same page. We're not seeing things eye to eye in the direction this business ought to go. And I have a goal to do X, whatever X is. Well, maybe that needs to be the obstacle. We need to list that. And the solution is we've got to provide some training. We need to get away and someplace out of the business and do some planning and get on the same page and make sure that we have that page that was mentioned yesterday to get on. Nathaniel Brandon said, I'm convinced that one of the most helpful things we can do for people is to refuse to buy in to their inappropriately restricted views of their limitations. My wife has taught special ed at the high school for a lot of years, and there was a C word that if you said the C word in her class, her special ed class, you're a special ed student, you get on the floor and do push-ups. And the C word can't. And again, that's an inappropriately restricted view of your own limitation. I can't do that, Mrs. Crockett. Well, maybe you can do 3 push-ups then on the floor. Okay. And so when I look at that and I think about that, sometimes we need to look at some of these inappropriately restrictive views of our limitations. I think sometimes we look at business and life in too small of a lens that we need to expand that and think and dream bigger and look bigger. Another quote that I really like, our chief want in life is to find someone who will make us do what we can. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Sometimes we have these dreams and these desires and we want to grow this business and we can see way down in the future and we have this vision of what we want it to be, but then we think we can't do that, or we need to find somebody that will help us do that, make us do that. So let me finish up here, Jared, and then we'll open it up to questions or whatever. And I don't have the chat open, so I haven't been looking at that. I do some total commitment leadership workshops, and the focus of those workshops is to learn and develop the skills necessary to become the leader that our lives and our businesses need us to be. Okay. And that to me starts mind shift and getting out of the old way of thinking, the old way of doing things, and shutting off some of these subconscious mind, finding the root of that. That was mentioned when my computer was froze up, that we need to get to the root of the problem. Well, sometimes we have to go back and figure out where that came from in the first place so that we can put closure to it and complete it and be able to move on and create something else. The next thing is improve quality of life, because that's what we're after when it all comes down to it. And quality of life in my book has 4 pillars. One of those is obviously money. In the world that we live in today, we have to have money to live and survive. And if we're going to have quality of life, our businesses have to provide that for us, that money. And whether part of that is salary or all of it's salary or part of it comes from profit and out of profit. But if we don't have a profitable business, we don't have money. And if we're going to have quality of life, we have to have money. Got to be able to control the stress that was talked about yesterday also. And when we're stressed for money, quality of life's not there. So money has to be part of that. Another part of that is time. And I want time and money in tandem with each other. It's not much fun to have money and we're so busy we don't have time to go enjoy doing something that we want to do. It's no fun to have time and not have money to go do something we want to do. So I want those two things in tandem. The third thing is relationship. When we start out in business, we might take any banker that will take us on. But when we have a good quality business, that relationship, we get to start to pick and choose who we want to do business with, who our banker is, who our accountant is. Maybe an accountant that served us well in the past. Now that we have a bigger, more profitable business, maybe is not the accountant we need in the future. Maybe our clients or customers that we served in the past are not the ones we want in the future because our business has evolved. But if we have that quality of life, that pillar of relationship where we can pick and choose, that changes a whole lot of things for us. And then the fourth one, that fourth pillar, to me, is purpose. And as our business provides us with time and money and relationship, then we can focus. We can take that 20% and focus on some of the things that we really want to do and maybe change the purpose of what we're doing in life. And then the other thing that we'll do in these workshops is we create a detailed plan. These workshops are 2.5 days. You'll walk away from there with a detailed plan with some identified obstacles and solutions around those obstacles to create the quality of life that you want. And for most of us, that's going to revolve around business. This is late notice, but if you're committed and you're ready to make some changes, we'll be in Scottsdale, the Phoenix area next week for 2.5-day workshop, the 24th through the 26th. Be in San Antonio, Texas, March 13th through the 15th, doing the same thing over again. If you're interested and you want more information, you can send me a text or call me, leave me a voicemail if I don't answer. If you text me, tell me what your name is. If you're new to me or I'm new to you, we're new to each other, and tell me you have some interest there, and we'll have a discussion. The planning that I do with clients, one of the requirements is off-site. I won't do that at somebody's place of business, whether that's an office or at a ranch or wherever. I found too many distractions there, and so a requirement is it has to be off-site. A lot of clients come here to Arizona, and we meet right where I'm sitting in my office. But here's an opportunity to be off-site and do some planning, because that is a requirement. The other thing, going back to relationships, there's a requirement there that you have to be committed to making change in your business. If you're not committed, I don't want to work with you. I want to work with people that are committed, ready to make change, ready to become the leader their business needs them to be, and move forward with it. So anyway, if that resonates with you, feel free to reach out to me. And again, there's an email address, a phone. I'm happy to fill any questions that might be in the chat, Jared. I'll turn it to you, and you can read the questions, or if there aren't any questions, if you have a question or something I left out, we can talk about that.
That was perfect. Thank you so much, Allan. Just a wonderful way to be able to set the foundation that we need to be able to have a leadership business. And I like that we have to be the legacy leader, right? I don't know, I might steal that from you, Allan. That's so cool. Okay, so I've been kind of watching here. Noah Rempel. Would you be able to unmute and tell us kind of what your background is? And I know one of the things, I probably just muted you accidentally there. Are you a cow-calf producer? Tell us.
We're cow-calf producer. We have a commercial and a purebred herd, as well as we have some grain land as well.
Very good. What would be one of the epiphanies or takeaways that you have from Allan here?
I got a lot of things I've written down here.
I've been watching, seeing you taking some ferocious notes.
Yeah.
Just pick one of the gems and share it, teach it back to us. And
there's a difference between leadership and management. You can be a good leader and a bad manager, or a good manager but a bad leader.
Gem, right? Perfect. Have you ever worked with Allan before?
Nope.
Would you be open? Would you like to have one of his spots that he's opened up for a 90-minute deep dive consultation?
Yeah, I would be interested in that.
Okay, so commitment, you sign up, you show up, just like everything else like you've done here today. Will you do that?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so we will put you down for one of those, and Alan has one more, and we're going to thank you for typing. Thanks for being vulnerable and being willing to jump off mute there, Noah, and
Yeah.
thanks for teaching us. So we will get you in contact with Alan, and
Cool.
probably the best thing to do here is just go ahead and jump on that calendar link before somebody else does, and jump into, and do you see that there? So we're going to reserve one of those spots for you. Does that work for you, Alan?
Yep, you bet. Look forward to it, Noah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I just we go by intuition a lot of times here. So again, show up, sign up, and pay attention. As far as questions, Alan, I think we're going to make up a little bit of time here, and we're going to honor one of our sponsors. One of the things, this is putting you on the spot. What is your schedule before the summit tomorrow, Alan? Like at
In the morning,
9:30 or yes.
I think I am free. Let me look at my calendar real quick and double check.
I was wondering if you would be willing to jump on and do just be one of the presenters in the room to do some Q&A at that point, and maybe it'll be off recording. It won't be that maybe you don't want your business shared with the whole world or whatever. But that's something that we're opening up for everybody that's registered. If you want some like one-on-one help, granted, what can we do in 30 minutes? Well, quite a bit actually, but show up, and that'll be an opportunity to be able to get some direct coaching from Alan. How's that sound?
Yeah, that'd be great. Here's the thing. I'm just scrolling through the chat while we're talking here. Here's one, Alan. Most of young entrepreneur business cannot grow due to lack of money. And there's an issue there. And depending on what the business is and how the business is structured, sometimes, if you go back to what Doug Ferguson talked about yesterday, again, sometimes we're our own obstacle when it comes to lack of money. That, well, I don't have any money, so I can't do that. Again, on the floor and do some push-ups because you use the C word. But I think we need to look at that and say, okay, how can we get creative about that? Because sometimes that's the story. Yeah, I don't have money, and so I can't really get started and do the things I want to do, or I'm started, but I can't grow my business because I don't have the funding available. And I think that the way to ask that question is how, if we start a question with how do I get the money? How do I find the funding? All of a sudden that changes things dramatically from having money or not having money. We can open up the creativity when we ask a question. We start with how. So I would suggest that maybe we take a look at that, and just, how do you do that? Because there are ways, and we know people that have done that, and we don't have time to get into that right now here. But anyway, I suggest that maybe is the wrong question to be asking. We ought to be asking, how do I come up with some funding? How do I find a partner? How do I, because if we start with how, then it opens up possibilities to us.
Very good. I like that. Remember, I don't have a farm yet. I'm not profitable yet. Instead, just add that yet or how, those clarifying words. Very good. We appreciate you, Alan. Thank you for being part of this summit.